To see you again, and good to see you, Tess, and all of you uh, coming together to practice Zen on a Saturday throughout this big country, maybe beyond. Today, I'd like to bring up a Zen koan, Zen story. Some of you may be familiar with this aspect of Zen, uh, these koan stories for contemplation, for consideration. And today's story may be particularly apropos for this No Barriers Zen group because it's a sign language koan. This is case number 84 in the Book of Serenity. And it's also case number 19 in the Blue Cliff Record. And it's also case number 3 in the Gateless Barrier. These are 3 Chinese koan collections, the 3 major collections of Zen stories. And when a story appears in all 3 of them, it's one of the especially dear stories to the tradition. Everybody wanted to include this simple story. It's called Jùzhī's One Finger. It's a very simple story in this collection. It goes like this. Whenever teacher Jùzhī was asked a question, he would just raise one finger. I think when we think of it's in writing, so when we hear one finger, I think most of us think of this particular finger. But I've heard that Yasutani Roshi, one of the teachers who helped bring Zen to America, when he would talk about this story, he raised this finger, his thumb. So we don't know which finger Jùzhī raised. And I think in the story, it doesn't matter. This finger, whatever finger it is, means the same thing. But I imagine that in ASL, in sign language, does this mean one?
Ocean is saying yes. It has a lot of meanings, but oftentimes it can mean one, yes.
That's great that it means one, and it has a lot of meanings. I think Judy's finger had one meaning and a lot of meanings. And does this in sign language, does this mean like okay, like good? Right on.
Yep, exactly.
So so even for those of us who don't know sign language like myself, I think we do know a little bit of sign language. I think most people would guess that this means one and this means right on. Okay. Yes. And I don't know. And this is a story from 9th century China. And so they may, okay might not have been the case in that culture at that time. I don't know. And we write the letter one with a vertical line, but in China, they write the letter one with a horizontal line. So hard to know exactly what Jùzhī did, but the written story says whenever this Zen teacher, Jùzhī, was asked a question, he would just raise one finger. Whenever he was asked any question. So we can imagine that he was asked questions like, why did Bodhidharma, the Zen founder, come from India to China? They often asked that question in the old days. It's a Zen way of saying, what's the ultimate meaning of Zen? I imagine if he was asked that kind of question, he would raise one finger. How do we really practice Zen? What's the essential practice of Zen? But I don't know, when he was asked, did the teacher, do you know if the candles on the altars were lit? I don't know if he would answer that way to every question, but it says whenever he was asked a question, he would answer thus. Some of these stories are longer, like dialogues, but this is a very simple one. That's the whole koan story. Whenever he was asked a question, he'd answer. So a little bit of background for this story. Jùzhī was known for reciting a dharani. Dharani is like a mantra. This dharani was called the mother of 70 million Buddhas, dharani. It's from India. In Sanskrit, this is going to be hard for the interpreter. It's called the Saptakoti Buddha Matra Dharani. And I mention that because Saptakoti in Sanskrit means 70 million. Koti is a Sanskrit word that means million or many, many. And Jùzhī is the transliteration of the Sanskrit koti, Jùzhī, koti. So he's named after this word million or many, many. And this dharani that he was known for chanting maybe millions of times. And he lived in a hut on the mountain. He was kind of a hermit practitioner. He liked to practice alone, so he wasn't used to conversations. But one day, a woman priest. This is another nice story because there aren't so many stories about ancient Zen women, and this is one of them. So this is I think a very sharp woman practitioner named Jùzhī, and she was traveling about, I think, visiting Zen teachers and maybe kind of testing these Zen teachers in 9th century China, testing their understanding. So when they traveled in those days, and still the priests traveling in Japan sometimes wear a big bamboo rain hat, sun hat, kind of covers their face a little. So she's wearing one of these big hats. She had a walking staff, and she showed up at the mountain hut of Jùzhī. And by the way, her name Jùzhī, means reality. So this priest named Reality showed up with her big hat on at Jùzhī's hut, and she walked around Jùzhī 3 times, as is sometimes a custom to honor teachers. She walked around him 3 times with her hat on. It's kind of unusual. Usually, take off the big hat to go in to a temple and circumambulate the teacher, but she left her hat on, walked around 3 times, and said to him, "If you can speak, Jùzhī, I'll take off my hat." In other words, if you can express some Zen, I'll politely take off my hat and we can sit down and chat. But poor Jùzhī didn't know what to say. He wasn't used to people coming by to visit, maybe. He was speechless. He was probably sweating too, wondering, wow, this is kind of intense. Reality just came to my hut and is asking me to express something, anything, but I can't express anything. And so Jùzhī, Reality, started to leave, started to walk away. And it was late in the day. So Jùzhī said, well, it's getting late. Why don't you stay for the night and you can leave tomorrow? And Jùzhī, Reality, said, if you can express yourself, if you can say something, then I'll stay for the night. Again, Jùzhī was speechless, didn't know what to say. We also might interpret this ancient Zen story as we might wonder what's going on here. It's already unusual that there's a woman priest showing up at this monk's hut in the mountains, and isn't that a little bit forward of him to ask this woman to stay for the night? So maybe we could look at this as a interpret it as a kind of modern dating story. And won't you stay for the night? We can have some tea and chat. Our first date. And she says, if you can express yourself, I'd like to have a date with you. But he didn't. He could have said anything, or he could have done anything, but he was just stuck. I imagine he was stuck because he wanted to give the right answer. He wanted to give the best answer. And he was running through various things he could say, but maybe he felt like nothing he thought of was good enough. In fact, maybe anything he could express would be good enough, but he was too he was too concerned with wanting everything to be just right. That's how I imagine it. So he couldn't say anything, and she left. And after she left, Jùzhī said to himself, uh, though I'm in the body of a man, I don't have the spirit of a man. In other words, I look like this person, but I don't have the spirit to just meet, anyhow would be fine. Any way would be fine. And he was about to pack his bags and go out looking for teachers, start wandering around the mountains where there were many Zen teachers in those days to further his practice. But that very night, the spirit of the mountains maybe have particular spirits. This mountain spirit had been hanging out with Jùzhī for a while. So the mountain spirit said, you don't need to leave this mountain to go look for a teacher. There will be a great bodhisattva who will come teach the Dharma for you right here. And Jùzhī trusted that spirit. So he stayed. And 10 days later, a Zen teacher showed up there on the mountain, just like the spirit predicted. Teacher Tianlong. And
Kokyo, what was
yeah,
the teacher's name again? I'm sorry.
Tianlong. I think it means heavenly dragon.
Thank you.
And he welcomed him and bowed respectfully to this teacher and told him the story of reality coming and him missing his chance with reality. And the teacher, Tianlong, raised his finger and pointed at Jùzhī, his long finger. And upon that expression, meeting that expression, Jùzhī realized great awakening. Maybe before he met this teacher, he felt that he had been studying a lot of Dharma and understood a lot of complicated teachings, but it was too complicated to express. He needed something more direct, straightforward, and this teacher offered it to him. Also, it may be that at this point, Jùzhī was really ready. This woman reality kind of humbled him and made him ready to open to a more direct expression of reality. So after Jùzhī was awakened and this teacher left, Jùzhī himself became a teacher. And as the story goes, whenever he was asked a question, he also raised one finger. For the rest of his life, he inherited that teaching from his teacher, one finger, and he used it himself his whole life. I imagine that teacher just happened to give this one response to Jùzhī, but he probably didn't always answer that way. But since it works for Jùzhī, that's all he offered from then on. And then another part of the story here that's in some of the other koan collections, they give this extended version. They tell this other part of the story that's a little bit dramatic. I hope this won't be too much for you. So later Jùzhī was teaching, and he had this attendant, young boy, novice monk, who is Jùzhī's attendant, and other people would come by the temple when Jùzhī wasn't around, and they'd ask, oh, what does your teacher Jùzhī teach? And the boy held up a finger, because that's all Jùzhī teaches. He was just being honest, right? And when Jùzhī came back one day and asked what had happened, and the boy said, well, people were asking what your teaching was, so I told them. And Jùzhī took out a knife and cut off the boy's finger, right, as he held it there. And the boy went screaming in pain, running away. And Jùzhī said, wait a minute. And the boy stopped in his extreme pain, turned around, and his teacher said, wait a minute. And Jùzhī held up the finger. And the boy realized great awakening. So this little addendum here about the novice boy is maybe something about imitation won't do. Even though Jùzhī always used this one finger to teach everything, the boy had to find his own way. And maybe we could understand it that the boy was kind of made this into something too much. It was a kind of conceptualized version of one finger. Oh, my teacher, he teaches this. He wasn't really being this. He had some idea of this. So Jùzhī cut off all ideas of this. Or maybe the boy was really attached to one, and Jùzhī thought he should realize zero. In any case, it seemed to work for the boy, and he probably took care of his bleeding hand at that point. And so sometimes Zen stories are like this. Did that really happen? Well, it's been passed along for over 1,000 years, this story. And it's a powerful teaching story to consider. Then near the end of Jùzhī's life, when he was about to die, he gathered the Sangha together, and he said, I attained Tianlong's heavenly dragons, one finger Zen, and I've used it all my life without exhausting it. And as soon as he said that, he died. So that's a story of Jùzhī's one finger and some stories around it. But the central story, the central koan in the Book of Serenity, whenever this teacher Jùzhī was asked a question, he would just raise a finger. What's that all about? How is that helpful we're so into the multiplicity and diversity of the myriad things, the differences amongst the myriad things, amongst all these sights, sounds, smells, tastes, sensations, thoughts, emotions. We're paying attention all day long to the many, many different experiences. So Zen has always been about honoring the truth of the many experiences, but also opening to one. There's one reality. It's not different from the many, many things. And I'm sure we've all heard about this oneness in Zen. Like that classic joke, what did the Buddhist monk say to the hot dog vendor? Make me one with everything. So how can we even talk about this unity or oneness that's really at the heart of Zen? Dogen Zenji, our lineage founder in Japan, once said, the mind that has been authentically transmitted is one mind is all things. All things are one mind. This mind is a key to understanding this unity. And Suzuki Roshi, who helped bring this lineage of Zen to America, had this term, big mind. He said, big mind includes everything within itself. Big mind, there's nothing outside of big mind. Big mind cannot be related to anything else because there's nothing outside it to be related to. That's how big it is. And we might feel like, well, how can me with my small mind right now realize this big mind? But it's taught that this big mind is also called ordinary mind. It is our present awareness right now. But we feel as if there's many, many things outside of our awareness that are kind of coming into our awareness, meeting our awareness. That all these sights and sounds and bodily sensations are happening to awareness. We often feel that way. But if we stop and sit quietly and explore the nature of our own present awareness right now, we can't find any edges or boundaries to this awareness. It's not the kind of thing that has edges, this awareness. We can't find any, can we? What is awareness, actually? It's very hard to say what it is. It's clear, knowing, awake, bright, alive, and yet it's also ungraspable and formless, sizeless, shapeless, boundless, centerless at the same time. Like space, like the space in the room wherever we're sitting right now is ungraspable, undefined, sizeless, empty, but it's also filled with light. It's the space when we look around the room, it's filled with all the appearances in the room. Awareness is a lot like that. It's one big space, one big space, indivisible space, filled with myriad experiences of colors and sensations and thoughts. And for all of us, always it's like that. But we're so into the myriad appearances that we often don't notice that they're happening in this one big space we could call big mind. So we can open to and explore big mind. We can wonder about it in awe. We can be devoted to it. And we can explore how all these experiences that are happening to us are happening not really to our awareness, but they're happening in our awareness. And are they like, are our experiences of objects? Like here's an object, something. It's appearing in awareness for all of us, right? Me and you, it's a visual experience right now, appearing in all of our awareness, if you can see the screen. Something I'm holding here. If you can't see it, you can it sounds like that. Has there's some experience happening in awareness. But is that experience something other than the awareness? This goes even a little bit deeper. We can explore when we have some time and space and quiet, like in zazen. We can listen to sounds or see sights or think thoughts and wonder and explore, are these experiences something in addition to awareness? Is this some kind of solid thing poking into the big space of awareness? Or is this experience of what I would call a watch that I'm holding, is this experience actually just awareness itself, taking the form of what we call a watch, taking the form of a thought, taking the form of a sensation, taking the form of an emotion, a taste? Is it actually just the one indivisible awareness taking these myriad forms moment by moment? So now we've shifted from our original assumption that these things like watches are happening to awareness. That's what we call duality. There's awareness over here, and then there's a watch out here happening to awareness, two different things. We can close that gap a little bit. And the things are actually happening in awareness. But even that is a little bit like there's two different things appearing in awareness. We can close that gap a little more and say that these experiences, like the sight of a watch, is happening as awareness. It goes from happening to awareness to happening in awareness to the even more subtly. This experience of seeing a watch is happening as awareness. In other words, awareness, it's the same awareness. It takes the form of a watch, takes the form of the feeling in our belly, takes the form of a thought, takes the form of the taste of oatmeal. We could explore that possible way of relating to our experience, that all these experiences are this one big mind that doesn't itself actually change, but it appears to express itself as many, many different types of experiences. Every possible experience we could ever have is just awareness taking a particular form. And another nice way to, I think, when we're on a Zoom call like this, we're all on Zoom. I think it just lends itself very nicely to this metaphor of for big mind being like the screen. We're all looking at a screen, one indivisible screen. And when you, the screen itself is formless and colorless, but the screen is displaying itself as these myriad faces, a bunch of different faces, right? And we are into looking at the content of awareness. So we're into looking at the particular faces. Zoom is designed to get us to look at the particular faces, not to look at the screen that they're being displayed on. The screen is, we think, is like nothing. We're basically ignoring the screen when we look at the images. But we can actually see if while we're looking at the image, we can shift our perspective a little bit. Well, without losing the image, just remember that we're looking at a screen. Do you feel like how it's a little bit of a shift of perspective? You can keep looking at the face, but see the screen at the same time that it's displayed on. Because we are looking at a screen, right? So we just acknowledge the fact that really what we're looking at is a screen that's displaying itself as this image. But we're mostly into the images and the array of different experiences. That's what we humans are into, particular experiences. But in Zazen, we can open to where are these experiences happening? They're happening on this colorless screen of awareness, just like right now with the Zoom screen. I don't know if you can feel that when we talk a little bit afterwards. I'd be interested to hear if you can relate to this. See if you can even feel a little shift of perspective from looking at the face to looking at the screen to looking at the face. They're not. It's really like you're not really looking at something different, but it's a little shift of perspective, I feel like. And if someone were to ask, what is it like when you're looking at when you're looking at the screen? And we might say, actually, I do feel like I'm looking at the screen, but if I were to describe what it looks like a face. Isn't that how it is for us? And that's non-duality, right? Someone might ask, when you're looking at big mind, what does it look like? It looks like this feeling in my belly and the sound of the wind in the trees and the sight of the faces on the screen and the taste of tea. Isn't that what big mind actually, how we would describe big mind? And this is very just an ordinary way of um, understanding a lot of these profound Zen teachings. Like, let's say, what is Buddha? What is Buddha? Big mind Buddha, the totality of Buddha mind. Well, it's like a dried turd, one of the ancient ancestors said. Or it's like you know, the tree in the courtyard. Buddha is um, a flowering hedge. These strange Zen stories, I hope from this discussion, seem like they're not that strange, really. They're quite straightforward. This is big mind. We can't escape big mind. We're always our big mind. And it appears as all our experiences simultaneously. But because we're so into the particular experiences, uh, it's good to remember again and again the unity of big mind, this one screen that displays as myriad images. So when Master Jùzhī was asked all these different questions about Zen, this and that, and how do we practice this and that, it seemed like his method was to constantly always point people back to the unity. It might have been frustrating because people wanted to get into some particular point, and those who got to know him maybe even stopped asking questions because we know what he's going to say to everything we ask. Is this getting boring to just keep seeing Judy's finger again and again? Was it boring for Jùzhī to keep showing the same finger again and again? If it was, then that finger should be cut off. This finger needs to be fresh every time. It needs to be like it's never been seen quite this way before. What is it? So in one of the verses, the Blue Cliff Record verse, or actually this is the introduction to this story by Yuan Wu. He said, referring to Judy's one finger, he said, it's like cutting a tangled ball of thread. Picture like a ball of yarn, a tangled ball of yarn. It's like, how do you untangle this mess of thousands of strands of tangled yarn? It's like cutting it right through it. When one strand is cut, all of them are cut. it's like dyeing this tangled ball of yarn. When one strand is dyed, all of them are dyed. I think that's a nice image. Uh, he goes on to say, this very moment, take all complications and cut through them all at once. Bring out your own family treasure and respond everywhere, high and low, before and after, with your one family treasure in the family of Zen. Sometimes we say, don't mistake the finger for the moon, right? The finger that's pointing at the moon. We say that the finger is just pointing at the moon. We should not get distracted by the finger and pay attention to the moon. That's an old Zen saying. Don't mistake the finger that's pointing at the moon for the moon. In other words, these teachings that are pointing towards reality, don't mistake the teachings for reality itself. But this kind of finger is not a finger pointing at the moon. It doesn't symbolize anything. It doesn't represent anything. It is the moon. It's a moon finger. If we think that it symbolizes or represents something, we miss direct expression of this particular finger. So in the Book of Serenity, the verse that celebrates this story says, old Jùzhī's fingertip Zen, 30 years he used it without wearing it out. Truly, he has the unconventional methods of a person of the way. Ultimately, there are no mundane things before his eyes. His realization, most simple. His methods, numberless and broad. An ocean of billions of worlds is swallowed by the tip of a hair. That's the way the old Zen people talked in 9th century China. And one final comment that this is, I think, Wan Song's comment in the Book of Serenity, commenting on this line. Whenever Jùzhī was asked a question, he would just raise one finger. Wan Song's comment is, why expend so much energy in answering Dharma questions like this? Already too much. So with all this in mind, would you like to have some discussion? Do we have time?
Yep, definitely.
Yes. Any questions? And I promise I won't give the same answer to all. That would be stealing Jùzhī's thing.